The cold evening wind moved slowly across the open range, brushing against the tall grass and rattling the old fence posts that lined Ethan Ward's ranch. It was the quiet hour between sunset and darkness, when the world seemed to pause for a breath before night settled in. Ethan, a lonely rancher living miles away from the nearest town, guided his horse along the familiar dirt trail that led home. His day had been long and tiring, fixing broken boards, feeding cattle, and repairing an old wagon wheel that refused to stay straight. Ethan preferred quiet work. He had lived alone for almost 8 years, ever since his parents passed away one winter. He filled his days with chores so the silence wouldn't feel too heavy. The ranch was all he had left, and he took care of it with steady dedication. He liked to believe the land understood him, even when people didn't. As he rode, the sky turned deep orange, then faded into purple. Stars began to blink through the darkening sky. Ethan pulled his coat tighter. The air was colder than usual. His horse's hooves made soft, rhythmic thuds on the trail, the only sound breaking the stillness. Then, something unusual caught his attention. Up ahead, near the old creek crossing, a small shape lay on the ground. At first, Ethan thought it might be an animal, maybe a hurt deer or a stray dog, but the shape didn't move normally. It twitched once, then fell still. Ethan slowed his horse and leaned forward, squinting into the dim light. A quiet, trembling voice reached him through the wind. "Please, help me." Ethan froze. He wasn't sure he had heard correctly. The voice was weak, almost like a whisper carried by the breeze. He waited a moment, listening closely. Again, the same fragile voice. "Please, help." Ethan's heart tightened. Someone was hurt. He guided his horse closer and dismounted quickly. His boots sank into the cool dirt as he moved toward the shadowed shape. When he raised the lantern from his saddle and held it over the figure, the dim light revealed what he feared: someone was lying there. A woman, curled in pain. She was covered in dust, her clothes torn in places and her hands pressed tightly against her side. Her breathing was shallow. Even in the dim lantern glow, Ethan could see she was injured. Though he could not tell how badly, he knelt beside her carefully. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The woman opened her eyes slowly. They were full of fear, confusion, and exhaustion. She looked young, maybe in her mid-20s. Strands of dark hair clung to her face, and her lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Please, don't leave. I need help," she whispered. Her voice broke something inside Ethan. He had never walked away from someone in need. He wasn't about to start now. "You're safe," he said gently. "My name's Ethan. I live nearby. I'm going to help you." She nodded weakly, though her expression showed she wasn't sure she could trust him yet. But she had no strength left to argue. Her body shivered with cold. Ethan removed his heavy coat and placed it around her shoulders. He noticed her hands were freezing. "We need to get you warm," he murmured. "Can you stand? I'll help you onto the horse." She tried to lift herself, but a sharp pain made her gasp softly. Ethan didn't push her. He supported her carefully, lifting her with steady arms. She wasn't heavy, but she felt fragile. Like every movement hurt her. He helped her onto the horse, then climbed behind her to keep her steady. She leaned slightly against him, breathing unevenly. "You'll be all right," Ethan said in a calm tone. "We're going to my cabin. It's safe there." The woman tried to speak her name, but her words came out faint. Ethan leaned closer. "What's your name?" "Maria," she whispered. "That's a good name," Ethan replied softly. "Just hold on, Maria. We're almost there." The slow ride home, the journey back, was slower than usual. Ethan didn't want to jolt her or cause more pain. His horse seemed to understand something was wrong and walked carefully. The night grew colder, and Maria's trembling grew stronger. Ethan held her gently to keep her steady and warm. Several times she whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't want to trouble anyone." Each time Ethan gave the same reply, "You're not trouble. You needed help. That's all." Maria didn't answer, but he felt her relax slightly against him. Her exhaustion was taking over. When they finally reached the ranch, Ethan slid off the horse first. He lifted Maria down gently, supporting almost all her weight. She could barely stand. Ethan carried her inside his small cabin, pushing the door open with his shoulder. The warm glow from the fireplace lit the room, chasing away the cold shadows. He lowered her onto his own bed, placing blankets over her carefully. Maria's breathing was still shaky, and her eyes darted around the room like she was afraid someone might burst through the door. "You're safe," Ethan assured again. "No one's going to hurt you here." She closed her eyes tightly, as if trying to hold back tears. Helping a stranger, Ethan moved around quickly but quietly. He lit another lantern, boiled water, and gathered clean cloth. He wasn't a doctor, but he had treated enough injuries on the ranch to know the basics. He returned to her side and spoke softly. "Maria, I'm going to check your injuries. I'll be careful." She hesitated, then nodded. Ethan worked slowly, gently cleaning the dirt from her arms. She winced at times, but he never rushed or pressed too hard. Her shoulder was bruised and there were scratch marks along her arm, like she had fallen or scraped against rough ground while trying to escape something. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. Her condition was more important than answers. When he finished cleaning the wounds, he wrapped her arm with clean cloth and helped her sit up just enough to drink warm water. She took small sips, her hands trembling so much that Ethan had to hold the cup for her. Her whisper broke the quiet room. You saved me. Thank you." Ethan shook his head. "You found your way here. I just helped." Maria looked around the small cabin again, the wooden shelves, the worn rug, the old table. Everything felt strangely comforting. She had been running alone for so long that the simple warmth of this place felt unreal. After a while, she opened her eyes wide with sudden fear. "Please, don't let them find me." The words came from deep inside her, filled with terror. Ethan paused. "Who, Maria?" Her lips trembled. She shook her head and whispered, "Please, not tonight. I can't talk about it. Not now." Ethan didn't push her. Whatever happened to her had shaken her deeply. "You don't need to explain right now," he said gently. "Just rest. I'll stay close. No one will enter this cabin." Maria blinked slowly and whispered, "Thank you." Before her eyes finally closed in exhausted sleep, the long night Ethan sat in the wooden chair beside the bed for hours. He watched the fire crackle gently in the fireplace, watched the way Maria's breathing rose and fell. She tossed in her sleep sometimes, whispering broken words he couldn't understand. Each time she whimpered, adjusted the blanket, or added another log to the fire to keep the room warm. He didn't lie down or close his eyes. His mind raced. Who hurt her? Why was she afraid? How did she end up alone near the creek? But he pushed those questions aside for now. Answers could wait. Her safety couldn't. Outside, the wind grew stronger, blowing dust against the windows. Ethan checked the door twice, making sure it was secure. He knew the land well. He knew anyone approaching would leave tracks in the soft dirt. If danger came, he would hear it long before it reached the cabin. Hours passed. The moon rose high, casting silver light through the window. Maria's breathing finally settled into a calmer rhythm. Her face, though still pale, looked a little more peaceful. Ethan sighed quietly. He didn't know this woman, didn't know where she came from, but he felt a responsibility toward her, a human need to protect someone who had nobody else. He whispered to himself, "Whatever happened to you, it ends here. You're safe now." A new morning by dawn. Ethan had barely slept, but he didn't feel tired. Something inside him felt awake, more awake than it had been in years. The ranch usually felt empty at sunrise, but today there was someone inside the cabin. Someone who needed warmth and care. As the first light of morning touched the room, Maria stirred slightly. She opened her eyes slowly, the confusion still present, but less frightened than before. Ethan stood up from the chair and gave her a small, reassuring nod. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" Maria swallowed weakly. "Better. A little, but still tired." "That's all right," Ethan said. "You rest. I'll make something warm for you." She watched him move quietly around the cabin, preparing simple soup with steady hands. She felt emotions she couldn't name: relief, gratitude, and something else. Something warm that scared her because it felt safe. When he brought the bowl to her, she whispered, "Why? Why did you help me?" Ethan smiled gently. "Because you needed help." Maria stared at him, trying to understand something simple yet rare. Someone doing good without wanting anything in return. And in that quiet morning light, as Ethan sat beside her, Maria realized that the lonely rancher who found her wasn't just a stranger. He was the first person in a long time who made her feel human again. The story of how she came to his ranch was still hidden inside her, heavy and painful. But she wasn't alone anymore. Not today. Not with Ethan watching over her. The next morning started slowly inside the small wooden cabin. Soft sunlight entered through the single window, touching the quiet room where Maria rested. Her breathing was weak but steady, and her eyes remained closed as she tried to recover strength. Ethan sat at the table across from her, polishing his old lantern and keeping an eye on her every few seconds. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard her trembling voice again, "Please, help me." He had never seen anyone in such a condition before, and he wasn't sure what had happened to her. But one thing was clear. She needed safety, food, and rest. That alone was enough for him. He didn't need answers right away. Maria opened her eyes around midday, confused at first. The room was unfamiliar, and she felt a sharp pain in her shoulder. Her breath became fast and shaky until she saw the calm, steady figure sitting nearby. Ethan stood up gently when he noticed she was awake. "You're in my cabin," he told her softly. "You were hurt. I brought you here so you could rest." She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Ethan handed her a cup of warm water and helped her sit up a little. She drank slowly, her hands trembling so much that he supported the cup for her. She whispered, "Thank you." And though her voice was faint, the sincerity in it was strong. Ethan nodded. "You don't need to thank me. You needed help. Anyone would have done the same." But Maria knew that wasn't true. She had seen people turn their heads away from trouble many times. Ethan didn't know her, yet he saved her without hesitation. That alone set him apart. For a few minutes they sat quietly. Maria looked around the cabin, the hanging tools, the old wooden table, a few books stacked in a corner, kettle warming near the fire. It was a simple place, but it felt peaceful, far more peaceful than anywhere she had been recently. Ethan prepared a small bowl of soup, made from vegetables and a little broth. He helped her take small bites. She tried not to look embarrassed, but he acted so calmly that she felt no shame, only relief. After she finished eating, Ethan asked, "Do you feel strong enough to talk?" "Only if you want." "I don't want to push you." Maria stared at her hands for a long moment before giving a tiny nod. Her voice was still shaky as she spoke. "My name is Maria. I'm Ethan," he replied, pulling a chair closer so she didn't have to raise her voice. She took a few deep breaths. "I ran all night. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I had to get away." Ethan didn't interrupt. He waited. She held her injured shoulder lightly and continued. "I was working at a remote camp, mostly cooking, cleaning, sometimes helping the older workers. A man there. He caused trouble all the time. Last night, he went too far. I tried to stop him from hurting someone. He got angry. Things got out of control." She didn't explain the details. She didn't have the strength yet. Ethan understood that her silence was not hiding anything. It was simply pain she was not ready to revisit. "I ran," I whispered. "I slipped, got hurt. I kept going even when I thought I would collapse. I didn't want him to find me. I don't know how I ended up near your ranch." Ethan listened quietly, absorbing every word. Her story wasn't complete, but he knew enough to understand her fear. She wasn't a troublemaker. She was a woman who had tried to do the right thing and had suffered for it. "You're safe here," Ethan said gently. "No one can hurt you on this land." She looked at him with tired, clouded eyes, searching for signs of doubt, but there was none. Ethan meant what he said. For the first time in a long while, Maria felt a fragile sense of safety. The days that followed, for the next few days, Ethan took care of Maria as she healed. He checked her bandages gently, making sure her shoulder wasn't infected. He prepared simple meals, soups, bread, and warm tea. He made sure she didn't move too much, reminding her that her body needed rest more than anything. Maria often apologized for being a burden. Every time, Ethan shook his head and said the same thing. "You're not a burden. You needed help. That's all." She slowly began trusting him. She noticed the way he worked, quiet, steady, never rushed. He moved with the calmness of someone who had lived alone for a long time and had learned patience as a companion. Maria had never met someone like him. The cabin started feeling warmer. Even though there were long silences between them, those silences felt comfortable, not awkward. When Ethan worked outside, fixing the gate, feeding the horses, repairing tools, Maria watched from the window, admiring how careful and responsible he was. Ethan also noticed Maria's gentle nature. Even while recovering, she tried to help. She folded blankets, swept a corner of the floor slowly, or washed a small cup. He always told her she didn't need to, but she wanted to. Helping made her feel human again, not a frightened runaway. Each evening, they sat quietly by the fire. Ethan often read a few pages from an old book aloud so she wouldn't feel lonely. She listened with a soft smile, enjoying the comforting sound of his voice. For Ethan, who had lived years in silence, having someone to talk to even a little felt strange but wonderful. The shadow of fear but beneath this peaceful routine. Danger still existed. One morning, Ethan discovered strange boot tracks near the far corner of his land. He crouched and touched them carefully. They were fresh, and they were not his. A chill ran through him. Someone had come searching. He followed the tracks for a short distance until they vanished near the trees. Whoever it was, they had been cautious. They had approached the ranch quietly, maybe watching from a distance, then left. Ethan didn't tell Maria immediately. He didn't want panic to overwhelm her. But he became more alert. He kept the lantern near the window at night, made sure the door remained locked, and walked with his rifle in the evenings while checking the animals. Maria sensed something was off. She saw the slight tension in Ethan's shoulders, the way he looked toward the tree line more often. She didn't ask at first, she didn't want to worry him, but the silence grew heavier. Later that afternoon, she gathered the courage to speak. She stood at the door, holding the frame for balance, and called softly, "Ethan, is something wrong?" He turned to her and hesitated, debating whether to tell her. She deserved truth, but he didn't want to scare her. "I found some tracks," he finally said. "Not mine." Someone was near the north fence. Her face went pale immediately. She gripped the door harder to steady herself. "They're looking for me. I knew they would." Ethan walked to her gently and guided her back inside so she could sit. "Maria, I won't let anything happen to you." She looked up at him with eyes full of worry. "But what if they hurt you? I don't want anyone else to suffer because of me." "You didn't cause any of this," Ethan said firmly. "You tried to stop something wrong. That's not your fault." Maria covered her face with her hands. She had been running for so long, always afraid, always looking over her shoulder. But now, knowing Ethan might be drawn into danger because of her made her heart heavy. Ethan placed a comforting hand on her arm. "Listen to me. You're not alone anymore. We handle this together." His calm voice steadied her. She lowered her hands and met his eyes. She saw no fear in them, only determination. And something else. Something warm that she didn't fully understand yet. Growing trust every day that passed. The bond between them grew stronger. Maria slowly regained strength. She walked short distances outside, helped gather water, or brushed Ethan's horse carefully. The horse liked her gentle touch, and that made her smile, a rare thing Ethan was learning to treasure. In the evenings, they talked more. Maria shared small pieces of her past, her childhood, her dreams, the villages she had lived in. Ethan talked about his life on the ranch, how he learned every skill from his father, and how loneliness had become his companion after his parents passed. They found comfort in each other's words. Maria often stared at the sunset over the wide open field and said, "I feel peaceful here, like the earth is helping me breathe again." Ethan would smile quietly, feeling the same way, but the shadow of danger still followed them. Ethan kept a constant watch. He didn't want Maria to know how little sleep he was getting. But he had decided something silently. If danger came, he would face it. He wouldn't let anyone harm the woman who had unexpectedly walked into his life with fear in her eyes and strength in her heart. The warning one late afternoon. As the sky turned orange and pink, Maria stood near the small garden behind the cabin. She felt peaceful until she noticed Ethan rushing from the field with a tight expression. He had spotted smoke from far away someone. Camping too close to his land, he approached Maria quickly and spoke quietly. "Stay inside tonight. Promise me." She heard the seriousness in his tone. Her heart tightened with fear. "Are they here?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But something feels wrong." Maria's hands trembled. She didn't want to run again. She didn't want Ethan involved in her dangerous past. She stepped closer to him, her voice breaking slightly. "If they come, I don't want you hurt because of me." Ethan looked into her frightened eyes, and without thinking much, he spoke with a firmness she had never heard from him before. "Maria, you're not alone anymore. I will protect this land, and I will protect you." Something warm and strong passed between them in that moment. Trust, gratitude, and a bond slowly forming. Maria looked down, touched by his words. She whispered, "Thank you." "Truly," Ethan nodded. "We'll face whatever comes. But for now, rest. Save your strength." Maria went inside, her heart still beating fast. She wasn't sure what. The sun dipped low behind the hills, painting the sky in deep gold and soft purple. Ethan Ward stood on his porch, watching the horizon with quiet tension. For days, he had sensed something changing around the ranch's strange tracks on the far side of the land. The smell of campfire smoke drifting from the woods, and a feeling in the air that was hard to explain. Something was coming. Inside the cabin, Maria folded the blanket on the bed with careful movements. Her arm had healed enough that she could do small tasks again. And she tried her best to keep herself busy so she wouldn't think too much about the danger that followed her. Still, every now and then, she stopped and looked at the door, her breath catching in her chest as memories flashed through her mind. Ethan stepped inside, brushing dust from his coat. He noticed her tense shoulders and the way she stood too still, as if listening for distant footsteps. "You all right?" he asked gently. Maria nodded, but her eyes remained uneasy. "I keep thinking someone is out there." She glanced toward the window where the sky was growing darker. "I don't want trouble to come to your home." Ethan placed a soft, reassuring hand on the table. He didn't touch her, but his calm presence soothed the air around them. "Maria," he said, "you didn't bring trouble? Trouble followed you. There's a difference. And a person who needs help shouldn't blame herself." Maria lowered her gaze. "I just don't want anyone hurt because of me." Ethan took a slow breath. "If anyone comes here looking for you, they'll face me first. I'm not afraid to protect this place, or the people in it." His words weren't loud, but they were steady like the earth itself. Maria felt something warm rise in her chest, a deep trust she hadn't felt in years. A quiet warning the evening grew colder. Ethan lit an extra lantern and kept it near the window again. Maria watched him move with quiet strength, checking the door lock, placing the rifle near the porch, and tying the horses closer to the cabin. He did all of it without saying much, but she knew why. Danger was close after dinner. They sat near the fire, the crackling sound filling the silence. Maria stared at the flames and said softly, "I wish I could forget everything that happened." Ethan turned to her. "You don't have to tell me, but if you want to talk, I'll listen." Maria looked into the fire, gathering her courage. "That man, the one who caused the trouble. He didn't like that I stood up for someone he mistreated. When he got angry, I knew staying there would only make things worse, so I left. But he doesn't like when people leave him." Her voice trembled a little. Ethan nodded slowly. "People like that want control, not respect." "Leaving was the right thing," Maria sighed. "I hoped he wouldn't follow. But I think he wants to scare me. Or bring me back. Or just punish me for defying him." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he remained calm for her sake. "He won't get close to you again," he said firmly. Not here. Maria looked at him, grateful yet afraid. She wanted to believe him completely. But fear still held its grip. Approaching footsteps, night came quietly. But it didn't stay quiet. It started as a distant echo hooves on dry dirt, slow and heavy. Ethan heard it before Maria did. He stood up instantly, motioning her behind the bed. "Stay inside," he whispered. "And whatever you hear, don't open the door." Maria's breath hitched. "Ethan, please be careful." He nodded once, then stepped outside, closing the door gently behind him. The night air was cold. The lantern outside flickered in the breeze. Ethan tightened his coat and walked down the porch steps. He saw them as soon as he reached the gate, 3 silhouettes on horseback. Waiting quietly, their shapes outlined by the moonlight, the leader of the group stepped forward. Ethan recognized the posture immediately, confident, aggressive, expecting people to obey without question. "You're the rancher," the man said. Ethan didn't confirm or deny it. "Can I help you?" "We're looking for someone," the man replied. "A woman. She came this way." Ethan's expression didn't change. "Lots of people travel these trails." The man smirked slightly. "Not this one. She left our camp without permission. We just want to bring her back. She belongs with us." Ethan felt anger rise inside him, but he kept his voice calm. "Nobody belongs to you." The other 2 men shifted uneasily. They weren't expecting resistance from a lone rancher in the middle of nowhere. "She's dangerous." "Right." The leader lied easily. "She caused problems. We're trying to fix things." "She's hurt," Ethan replied. "Whatever happened, she doesn't want to go back." The man's voice hardened. "We're not asking you. Tell us where she is." Ethan stepped closer, his stance firm. "She's not going anywhere with you." Silence stretched across the dark ranch. The horses snorted quietly. The moon hid behind a thin cloud. The leader glared. "Move aside. We'll look around. You can't stop us." Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't reach for the rifle leaning by the porch. He simply stood straight, unshaking, and said, "You step on my land without permission, and you'll regret it. Go back. She's not yours, and you'll never find her here." The man clenched his jaw, but before he could speak again, another sound echoed across the field, the soft clinking of metal, the faint glow of several lanterns, and the quiet murmur of approaching riders. Ethan didn't turn to look, because he already knew his neighbors had come. Even though the ranch was far from town, people kept watch over each other. A strange group riding near Ethan's land had been seen earlier, and word spread quickly. Now 4 local ranchers approached, their lanterns lighting the darkness. One of them, a tall man named Harris, called out, "Everything all right here, Ethan?" Ethan nodded once. These men were just leaving. The leader looked around, realizing he was outnumbered. His confidence cracked for the first time. "This isn't over," he muttered, pulling his horse back. "She'll regret hiding," Ethan answered calmly. "Not if she stays here." The men turned their horses and rode into the darkness, disappearing between the trees, relief in tears. When the sound of hooves finally faded, Ethan let out a slow breath. Harris approached him. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "Thanks for coming." Harris tipped his hat. "We figured something wasn't right. You're not usually up this late." Or this armed. Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "Appreciate the help." The neighbors stayed a little longer to make sure the men truly left the area. Then they rode away, trusting Ethan could handle things now. When the ranch fell quiet again, Ethan returned to the cabin. Inside, Maria stood frozen near the window, her hands covering her mouth. She had tried to stay hidden, but she heard everything. When Ethan entered, she ran to him before she could stop herself. "Are you all right?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm fine," Ethan said softly. "They're gone." Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief, fear, and overwhelming gratitude. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "You could have been hurt." "You could have," Ethan interrupted gently. "Maria, I wasn't going to let them take you. You deserve safety. You deserve peace. You deserve a chance to live without fear." She covered her face with both hands and cried quietly, leaning against him for support. Ethan didn't speak. He simply let her cry, standing steady like the ground beneath her feet. When she finally calmed, she whispered, "Thank you for everything." Ethan shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." Maria looked at him with soft, emotional eyes. "I owe you more than you know." A new start the next few days brought calm skies and gentle breezes. Maria felt lighter with each sunrise. News eventually reached the ranch that the men who caused trouble had been caught by the authorities 2 towns over. They wouldn't be bothering her or anyone again. For the first time in months, Maria could breathe without fear. She stayed on the ranch while recovering fully. But the cabin was no longer a place of hiding. It became a place of comfort. Each morning, she helped Ethan feed the horses or hang washed clothes under the sun. Each evening, they sat near the fire, talking about small things that made life feel normal again. Ethan wasn't lonely anymore. The silence that once filled the ranch had been replaced by soft laughter, gentle conversations, and the quiet warmth of companionship. One morning, as Maria stood outside watching the horses run across the field, Ethan walked up beside her. "You look happier," he said softly. "I feel safer," she answered. "Because of you." Ethan looked toward the horizon, hiding the small smile on his face. "You can stay here as long as you want, as long as you feel this place is home." Maria took a slow breath, letting the warm air fill her chest. Then she looked at him, her voice steady. "I don't want to leave," she said. "Not anymore." Ethan met her eyes, and something unspoken passed between them, something gentle, honest, and full of hope. For the first time in a long while, both of them felt that life had given them a second chance, and that lonely ranch, once silent and empty, now carried the sound of 2 hearts healing together.